the real star. Well, we all know who the real star of these Jurassic Park movies are. And as fun as all that looks, nothing compared to the challenge given to the studio of building a full-size Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's huge. They solved the challenge of the alien queen, but the alien queen, like we said, can really look like anything. So if you need more space for performers or cables, you just design it in. It was also all hard surface. People already know what a T-Rex looks like. There's little room for error, and no one had ever attempted anything so big. Literally 40 feet of dinosaur from tail to nose. But when Steven Spielberg asked Stan Winston and his team could do it, he immediately said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." Later, he admitted he had no idea how to really accomplish this. They actually built the T-Rex like you would a large boat, with aluminum speed rail spine and a wooden hull segments that would serve as the ribcage. The mechanics would be wedged in between all of these wood segments, and ultimately chicken wire would be applied and covered with fiberglass. But what about the skin? Well, for that, you're going to need 3 tons of clay. It took 8 sculptors 16 weeks to complete the flesh. From that sculpt, they created a mold to produce the foam and latex skin that would ultimately get painted and glued to the frame. And as easy as that, you have a cute little 40-foot dinosaur. Piece of cake, right? Wow. Well, after they had all of the foam, the latex, the glue, the high-precision mechanics in perfect working order and shipped to Pinewood Studios in England, that's where the director, Steven Spielberg, informed them that there's going to be a torrential rainstorm in the scene, and this was not anticipated. Not only did the team have to work around the clock to press towels into the dinosaur and put hair dryers all over him, all of the calibration equipment that was set for dry weight had to be recalibrated hourly due to the soaking and the damage and the drainage. The mechanics were a major part of the construction. The safety was primary concern, of course. They first considered having people inside the beast, but with hydraulics and computers and all the machinery, there could be no mistakes. Stan was scared to death that the T-Rex would basically trip and the weight would literally kill an actor. It weighed 9,000 pounds. The T-Rex possessed 57 independent motions, all hydraulics, all computerized, with the exception of the radio-controlled eyes. And it was basically a motion-controlled device. You record the moves for a take, and then you can play it back exactly over and over again so people can kind of practice what that T-Rex is going to do when the cameras are rolling. You also had the ability to basically override the recorded takes, for safety's sake or for any kind of ad-libbing or instructions from Steven Spielberg. Let's hear directly from the team what was involved in bringing this monstrosity to life.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex, we built full size, 9,000 pounds of a completely full-size animatronic robotic machine.
This is Richard Landon, mechanical designer for Stan Winston Studios on the original Jurassic Park project. I was in charge of creating the armature that supported the full-size sculpting stand for the T-Rex.
I'm Mike Tersick, and I was one of the artists fortunate enough to work on this project.
This is Shane Mahan, and we'll be talking about the creation of the sculpture of the full-size T-Rex from the first Jurassic Park.
Over there, a little bit more this way. Good, okay, go back the other way.
Here's Stan talking to Steven Spielberg into the camera.
It's all for you, Steven. We love dinosaurs.
You're watching a very quick progression. That small 5th scale sculpture that you saw was the basis of these parts and components that you see now. We took the 5th scale, which was sculpted, and then it was cut like so many loaves of bread, if you can imagine that. Each piece was then numbered, and then the parts are cut out so that they can fit over the structure the metallic structure that's going to support these pieces. So it's basically like constructing a hull of a ship. You see 15, 16, so on and so on. And how that was done was the parts were numbered top to bottom, analyzed, and then put on an opaque projector. And the projector was then projected on the wall to the correct scale, and then the wood was cut accordingly. So it was all done by eye and mathematics and a lot of calculations.
God, it was just an incredible undertaking, really, when I think back on it, that we actually managed to pull this off. There was so much ingenuity. Everybody really pulled together and really made this work. There's the miniature that Rich did, and the armature, and then the full-size armature in the background. I believe those are the legs as well, that you see, the tall pieces. So we're just about to get ready here and place the bulkheads on.
We were actually using techniques that were developed, hundreds and hundreds of years ago by sculptors of large bronzes and such. There's the 5th scale painted, and that was our guide and our gauge for the reconstruction, because what we had to do is reconstruct the sculpture from scratch.
And Stan would come in on a regular basis and say, okay, I want to be sure that I've got room for the nostrils, I've got room for the eyes. Are you sure this spacing is correct? And that would not only mathematically prove on paper that it was correct, but then I had to also have to satisfy him artistically. And we would adjust little things like how much the belly would hang or how much the tail would droop. And some things weren't exactly the same as the original plan structure, but we changed it so that the artist liked it, because it's the artist's eye that always decided what the final product was. There it stands.
Now, the process of chicken wire and fiberglass is laid over the chassis of the creature's body. This is to give the clay something to stick to without going right through the wire, because at some point the weight would just push through. Respirators, doors are open. Okay, now many weeks later in this process, the first layers of clay are just being sort of drafted into place. This takes many days, and this is Roma clay. This is not a sulfur-free clay. This is Roma clay. I think it's a number 2 or number 3 medium clay. And those are gauge sticks. Those sticks that you see in there are gauges of thickness for the calculation of skin and where bones may go. What we had to do was we would take the 5th scale little castings and using the measurements recreate everything. Mike Tersick was in charge of sculpting the head predominantly.
My focus was the head and neck area. I wanted to make sure that I could keep that as accurate as possible. By this time, I knew the sculpture pretty intimately, because I'd done the 5th scale and the small scale, and here we are on the big one. So basically, everybody, if they had a sculpting question, they ran to me and for answers.
It was somebody's job every morning to cut clay from the packages and put pallets of clay in the oven in the other side of the building early in the morning to heat it up so that the clay was warm. This whole process from start to finish took 16 weeks to complete, just for the sculpture, not talking about molding it and casting it. I believe it was just for the sculpture.
I would close my eyes at night and see scale patterns.
This neat little tool I made. It's kind of cool.
Very nice.
It's got a little round
Fantastic tool design.
You could do this. Before, see, the primitive method was with this, and you would have to do this and then turn it.
I actually, I remember I put my initials MT up on the top of the T-Rex head, and Stan saw it. He said, "What's this?" And quickly I said, "Stan, you're looking at it upside down. That's not an MT. That's a WI for Winston Incorporated."
The teeth here are just have been mocked up out of foam core to get the absolute look of how it's going to feel. But you can see like all the subtlety of wrinkles, scales. You know, this character had to feel 100% real, or the film just did not work.
Each sculptor would bring their favorite technique and their little tricks of the trade. Some of them would take the clay and stir it up with alcohol or acetone and liquefy it, and then they could apply sort of a sluice that almost looked like aged skin drawn out over an area. Other guys had different tools and techniques that they would try and teach the other guys to use, and over the course of the 3 months of the sculpture, they ended up doing a really good job of doing a really unified look. Everyone had their own contribution, and yet the T-Rex looked like one creature, not a patchwork quilt of various styles. There's the full-size T-Rex really kind of coming together. You can see the legs are on. She still needs her small arms up there at the base of her neck, but she's standing up into the top of the building. They actually had to raise the roof, literally, so that when she began moving and they did the mechanical structure, she'd have somewhere to go. The small forearms were sculpted on a separate stand down a little closer to the ground, and then Stan would request on a regular basis that the whole thing be assembled so that you could tell the proportions were all correct, that everything looked right in relation to one piece to the next. Spielberg came by on a regular basis too. He stayed very involved in how it looked. The legs were originally aluminum structures on the exterior. You can see the aluminum sticking out of the side, and that ended up being not enough to support the weight, so we had to change to steel exoskeletons to sort of hold up all that weight.
Thank you very much for watching. The creation of the T-Rex was monumental in the history of Stan Winston Studio, and it was one of Stan's great and most prized creations of creatures that he had done.
I'm Richard Landon. Thank you for watching the behind the scenes on creating the full-size Tyrannosaurus Rex sculpture. It was a huge personal point of pride for me that Stan trusted me to create something so large and so heavy. Having had no background before, we all grew out of makeups and Terminators and little tiny things, and for Stan to embrace this group of people as having the ability to step up and grow up and build something this fantastic and gigantic was a huge point of personal pride.
I haven't seen this video in years, and again, looking back at this, I can only wonder, what were we thinking?